to build the homeland. That was the only phrase, just the phrase, to build the homeland. And so, I had to work for the domestic market.
Nhi is back with you all for another episode, where Nhi gets to meet the artisans, the leading artisans in Vietnam. Nhi feels very honored to represent all of you who have been watching me over the years, to sit here and together listen to the stories, thoughts, and sharings of the people who have spent their entire lives creating cultural and artistic values and preserving things that, for Nhi as a member of the younger generation, Nhi feels very grateful that I still have the privilege to sit here and listen to these stories. And today, it's Mr. Ha. Nhi came here on an occasion a few months ago with my daughter. I immediately fell in love with this place, everything here. But I think it will be more precious and cherished when we get to hear from the story itself, from Mr. Ha. I call him Chu Ha, Uncle Ha, because I think it's more intimate. Could you share a little with my viewers about you and the things you've done over the past many years? Why did you choose to take up the craft of sculpting this traditional pottery?
The whole life, the whole story. It's a very long story, and it was also by chance, and it's a lot of things, a lot of things. I was a soldier, yes, I was a soldier on the battlefield. I came back as a wounded veteran. I was a wounded veteran returning from the battlefield. In the year 82, at the end of 82, I came back. After returning, I followed my father for a few years. My father was a man who was the first to make porcelain, to successfully make it, in this land of Quang Nam, yes. And then he fell ill, so I took care of him. Until the day he passed away. He passed away in early 84. So when my father passed away, I had many choices. There were many. Many of my father's friends came back, and some wanted to get me a government job. Others wanted to send me to the West, and so on. But back then, my father had a small museum at home. Kiln items, his terracotta and porcelain. The porcelain is still there now. At home, his comrades from the war made a remark, saying, "Now that you're gone, is there anyone who will carry on?" That was a remark that haunted me. It made me think, even though I had no skills. Coming back from the army, I didn't know any trade. I had no profession. I was only passionate about taking photos. I'd take my camera, go out, take pictures, photos of my wife, all sorts of things. And one day, I had another friend. That was Mr. Ngo that fam. He came from Hue. Previously, he worked at a porcelain factory. He was close to me, so he came and invited me. He said, "Let's go to Hue and make porcelain with me." So when I heard that offer, I was extremely excited about. And so I bought 2 loaves of bread, plain bread, in my bag. And so I cycled to Hue. I had enough money to get to Hue, so I took my bike to Da Nang to go to Hue. So I went to Long Hung to find him. At first, I went to work with him. I knew nothing about the craft. Basically, I didn't know a single thing about the craft. I only knew that, before, I had some exposure to the porcelain industry. I knew this and that, but I hadn't actually done it. So back then, I went out with him. I went to work for the cooperative in Phu Bai, my first days there. During the day, I would just potter around, but at noon, I would take the chance to study. I taught myself, did my own experiments, because I went there, in the role of a teacher. So I had to teach the kids. At noon, when the students went home, I would quickly study, so I could teach them in the afternoon. So I worked there for almost a year in Phu Bai. Then, the people from the porcelain factory in Tan Binh, they went out there. Then the man, the director of the porcelain enterprise in Binh Quai, here in Quang Nam, he came out and said, "So, aren't you coming back to build our homeland, son? Come on back. Come work with me in Quang Nam. Come build our homeland." That was the only phrase, just the phrase, to build the homeland. And so I left Hue and went back to work at the porcelain factory in Quang Nam. Those were the days when I really started to get my hands on the craft. I went to work at the porcelain factory. The years I spent there, I got to travel here and there. I went to Bat Trang, to Hai Duong. I went to study at the Hai Duong porcelain factory. Then I went to Min Long. I traveled a lot because the director, he was very fond of me. He was like a godfather to me. Director Lê Phai Hun. I got to travel a lot, to many enterprises. Basically, I traveled a lot. Everywhere I went, I learned a little something. So I worked there until the end of 89. I started in 85, until the end of 89. Meaning in 90. Chinese goods flooded the market, and we couldn't compete. That was the time when all the establishments that were state subsidized all collapsed. It was a rout. Basically, it was like a total collapse. And so, I also went back. I followed my wife back to her hometown. I told my wife, let's leave everything and go back to the countryside, rather than staying there to work at a brick kiln. While my wife had to be a trader, she had to go to the market. Back then, she had to rush to the market, and in one day, she would cycle 30 kilometers, plus another 30 kilometers to 40 kilometers by bus. She had to go buy goods all the way out at Hon Market in Da Nang to sell them. It made me anxious, so I decided to quit and go back in the countryside. I didn't know what to do, so I held my son. At that time, my son was 3 years old, and with my wife, she went back to trading. When I got back, my first task was to go take pictures again. I took pictures for a photo studio in Hoi An, but it didn't feel right. Then I decided to clear everything out and build a kiln right behind the house, because back when my father was alive, he only dreamed of building a small kiln behind the house. That was his dream. And when I returned, I thought, whatever money I had, whatever I could cash in, I poured it all into building the kiln. Then I went to ask for coal and other things. I brought back some guys from the factory. For a whole month, I fired up the kiln once. It melted. It melted a lot. I dried it in the sun, but it still melted. I think I didn't get the amount of coal right. Back when I worked at the factory, it was different, but when I came home to work for myself, I wasn't doing it professionally. I just made the shape and thought it was done. But firing the kiln is a different story. A terrible story. Every time I fired the kiln, it would melt. It melted to the point that I had to spend 3 days chiseling the kiln open. I had to borrow tools to deal with that kiln. It took 3 days to chisel that kiln open. Every day, I had blood on my face from all the shards flying at me. I still keep some of those pieces as souvenirs now. After that incident, I closed the kiln for good. After that kiln, I fired another one. I remade everything, fired it again. It fired successfully. Back then, I managed to make terracotta and porcelain statues due to many fateful encounters and my passion. I wanted to try again, but I continued to fail as I couldn't sell anything. Yes, I couldn't sell them anywhere. I displayed them in front of my house. I had a shelf to display them on. I wrote a sentence in charcoal, very large. My love, I have failed you. Trying for the second time, I started by taking my camera and going to Da Nang. I worked as a freelance photographer, then moved into color photo processing. Back then, color photo processing was a hot commodity, so I worked there for a while and it was intense. Basically, I did all sorts of things. I tried every trade, and while in Da Nang for a few months, I couldn't stand the chemicals from color photography. They were very toxic. I couldn't eat well. It was a hard life, so I decided to go back home. Back then, I had many fateful connections. I had an older friend who was a poet. He was very good at fortune telling.
Oh, fortune telling too?
He knew fortune telling.
This part is interesting.
He was very good at fortune telling. He was a soldier on the Cambodian battlefield. He's a famous Vietnamese poet, reciting poetry, and he was skilled at fortune telling. And I knew about it when I developed my first color photos. When I made money for the clients, for the technicians, made money for the owner, I took 2,000 dong and went straight to him to ask him to tell my fortune, because I couldn't bear such a difficult life anymore. And so he read my fortune for a while and said, I don't know what will come to you at the end of the year, but that opportunity is yours, and you should go home. Your fate lies with your wife's family. Whatever your wife decides, you should listen. And your wife is not better than you. But if your wife agrees, you should do it. But if she doesn't agree, even if you do it, you will fail. And I didn't know what to think, but at that time, I clung to that. And he said, just go home. Go home, and whatever your wife agrees to, do that. And so I went home. After that, I tore down the kiln to raise pigs. I raised a fat sows. Then I took care of my son, took him to school. And in the morning, I'd take my wife to the market. I'd take my wife to the market to buy goods. Then I'd come back home. The story really begins from there. When I felt so bored, I just sat down and I made some figurines to put in miniature rock gardens. You know.
Yes, I know. Those small things.
Tiny things. Smaller than a finger, about the size of a chopstick. Deer, storks, tigers. I made things that were within my ability. After I made them, back then, every day, my wife would give me 1 pack of cigarettes, dolot cigarettes. And it came to the point where I secretly went to Da Nang. I looked for a few places that sold decorative items. I asked them, I said that, can I sell these things if I make them? Sure, you can try making them and I'll see. So I went back and started making them. At that time, my friend in front of the house, he was making rice paper. He'd gather firewood, collect the charcoal, and save it for me. Back then, having no money was very hard. Basically, I stopped smoking dolot cigarettes. Just give me the money. I stopped smoking dolot cigarettes. I smoked shredded tobacco instead. It smelled awful. To save the extra money to buy paint. And so, I started making those tigers and things. Woodcutters, travelers, tigers, deer, storks. I made them very small, very beautiful, very lovely, and I put them in a condensed milk can. Then I'd put charcoal in and fan it. I'd fan it until it was fired. Then I'd take them out to paint. And back then, I didn't dare go sell them myself. I told my wife, take these to that place, and ask them, and then to sell them on consignment. To sell. Then at noon, she came back and checked. One time, the shop next to that one, they called over a motorbike taxi driver and sigh, sir, later when you drive that lady, tell her to bring those things to me tomorrow. I'll sell them, and I'll pay in cash. The concept of cash back then was a big deal. The concept of cash, even now, after more than 10 years, I'm still haunted by the idea of cash. Back then, with consignment, you never got cash. Basically, it sold well, so they wanted to give me cash. So my wife came home. Before she even reached our alley, she was already telling me the news. Then I started making the first one, the second one, and I started making more. I started to get my first earnings. My wife brought home 70 dong. She said, this is yours. With what you make, we can buy tiles for the floor. And we had the house over there, the one with the coconut leaf roof. It was very beautiful. That was the year that year was when the movie Journey to the West came out. Back then, in 90. It was a huge hit. So I thought, I also went to see the movie. And I loved that movie. So I started to scale down. Monk Tang and his 3 disciples. So that was the starting point. Monk Tang and his 3 disciples. I made them look real. Basically, I made them look very realistic. I made them very small, like this. My career started from there. It wasn't just 2 sets, or 3 sets, 5 sets, then many more. I sold thousands of sets, I don't even know how many, until I built my career. As for making terracotta, it only took shape then, because I couldn't make porcelain. Making porcelain is very difficult, that's one thing. Second, back then, when my father worked at the porcelain factory, he had a heat-retaining kiln, a kiln with excess heat, so he would make his own products, and he would fire them there. I found that I really liked the unglazed products. I really liked them. I just liked them. Until one day, I met an older friend, and back then, he was looking for my father to learn about glazes. But when my father passed away, I went looking for that friend. I went to find him and he talked to me about terracotta, Cham terracotta. And so he took me to other places. Then he took me to places that had Cham statues. Honestly, I was fascinated back then. Fascinated. Very fascinated. But when I made them, I couldn't sell them. For a while, I was very passionate. And I had to start making them. I fumbled around and then started working, from the smallest details. Not to mention the many days and months following him to study the structure of cam art, to research the cam. Back then, I even researched the cam people themselves. I delved into that subject, and the two of us also had some plans regarding the cam artifacts, but I was pragmatic about one thing. I didn't pursue it blindly like he did. He was Lê Văn Chin. If you read, search on Google, and on Facebook, I wrote a very long article about him. Yes, Lê Văn Chin. The man who. He built the cam tower in Da Nang. He pursued the cam culture with incredible passion, but I couldn't, because I had children and all that. When I made cam statues, it was fine. I made a lot of them. Everyone I met liked them. Everyone praised them. Everyone loved them. But they would take them as gifts, not buy them. No one would buy them. A lot of them. I left them at the Cam Museum. I couldn't sell many there either. So those were my starting points. My initial concept, when I managed to build a slightly larger kiln, it came to the point where I had workers. I had 2 people. The journey to the West sets were still in demand. I was developing the concept of terracotta. Terracotta from that time, from the products of the cam people. And I wanted, back then, honestly, I wasn't talking about culture or heritage or anything. I didn't dare think about such grand things. But because I also really loved cam artifacts, and I had a wish for more people to know about them, I wanted to convey it to many people. So I kept making them, but then, whether they sold or not, I still made them. Then I would do other things to make a living. For example, making the journey to the West sets and other things to earn a living, so I would have time to make statues. When the cam items didn't work out, I switched to making statues. Statues of the kin people, statues of women, and so on. They didn't sell either, because nobody had any concept of terracotta. When I first started with terracotta, nobody had any concept of terracotta at all. Even in the entire Than Ho pottery village, the most beautiful thing was the savings jar, the terracotta jar for saving money. There were tiles, savings jars, but nothing else. Tuhi toy figurines also came later, but at that time, when I made terracotta, I made beautiful things, very beautiful and elaborate statues, but people, no one accepted them, and they were afraid they would break. They were afraid they would shatter. They couldn't imagine it. They had no concept of terracotta whatsoever. To survive, I was forced to paint them. Plaster sold well, so I had to paint the terracotta to look like plaster. I had to paint over them. I did many things in order to sell them. Back then, there were the first products. Terracotta was sold in Hoi An. And back then, there were the first tourism products. The first ones sold to tourists were in the years 90, 91 in Hoi An. It was only terracotta. It was cheap. Anyone who was willing, any shop owners who, any shops that were willing, would take them to sell. And generally, I still had to paint them. Some were painted, some were not, and gradually, in the years 90, 91, terracotta products started to appear here, and people often said that for terracotta, you go to Hoi An. For terracotta, you could only go to Hoi An, not Than Ho. Than Ho had nothing. Go to Hoi An. It was just that a few shops there had my products. I'm telling the truth. Now, the shop owners in Hoi An, in 90, 91, I already had handicrafts selling in the shops. The handicraft shops of Hoi An. So when people asked to buy terracotta, they were told to go to Hoi An. But actually, it was me, just making the products. As for Than Ho's reputation, that came later. Later on, it became a tourist destination. I don't know what happened after that. So that was the period when it started. And there's another fateful story I'll tell you for fun. In the old days, in my father's time, there was a man who was a photographer, a cinematographer. He was the head of the special features department at Da Nang television station before. He was a very artistic person. He loved the arts. And he was the husband of Ms. Trung Yen, the head of the news department. Back in my father's time, when he worked at the porcelain enterprise, that man came to film. Then later, on a trip back to Dien Ban, he was filming a wedding for a client, and he saw my products. He asked about them, and people said they were mine. He was startled. He asked, "Huh, aren't you the son of Mr. Lê Tuc?" So he looked for me. He found me. The first day he found me. The next day he said, "My circle has everything. Artists, poets, PhDs, doctors, but we don't have a simple, rustic man like you. So, let's become sworn brothers. You have to be my younger brother." Then, for the first time, in 1993, he came to film a short news piece for me. He made a news report. He filmed a segment for me, about 5 or 7 minutes long. That film was first broadcast on VTV Da Nang. Then it went on the national VTV channel, and that happened to be at the same time that in Da Nang, there were a few people going abroad. Some guys from the University of Technology were going abroad. The province invited him up and basically said, "You go abroad and find business for the country." So, by chance, when he was over there, he met a client who dealt with terracotta. He was buying terracotta. So when he returned to Vietnam, he sat down and mentioned it. My film had just aired a few days before. So the two men, Mr. Vo Nu Chien, later on he became the rector of the College of Technology, and Mr. Duong Mung Ho. The two of them went to great lengths to find me. Back then, it was just me and my apprentice, Thao. The kiln was very small in 93, so my operation was very simple. So he came. We met. He brought that client back. Back then, I didn't have the capacity to handle it, so I only made samples. I just sat and made samples for them, and then I sent them to the factories in Quang Nam to produce terracotta. That was the golden era of terracotta in Quang Nam. To establishments, to state-owned factories, and to establishments of Bok Dang were making terracotta to sell. After a while, they stopped buying, but at that time, I also started to expand my kiln. After making samples for them and earning some money, I started to build a bigger kiln, and one also started production. I started production from that opportunity. It was truly thanks to Mr. Tien. He brought it to this land of Quang Nam. But there's this thing. When we were doing very well with exports, they only made things for export. Whatever they made, it was bought. They made whatever was ordered. I did the same. There was still no domestic market. I couldn't sell to the domestic market.
So was that your most prosperous time? Would you call that your peak?
That time, the period from 93, 94, 95, 96, 97 was a prosperous time for business. At that time, with foreigners, they started to like it, and we made for export. It was lucky that I was exporting. I sold just like that. Containers would come and pick it up. The container would come down. There was a center where I packed them to go. I made their cultural items. Egyptian culture, Mexican culture, French culture, all of their cultures. At that time, it was also lucky that I had a sudden realization. I thought about it and told my wife, "We have some money now. Let's buy a piece of land on the main road." Buy a piece of land. Then I thought about what would happen if this client stopped doing business with us. What would I do? The thought that I had, and now everyone who works in this field is just now realizing that what I thought was right. So I said that. I sat down and set a principle. We still have to produce for the domestic market. One department must still make products for the domestic market. Then go down to the main road and open a shop to sell, while the export department can keep doing its thing. I did it that way. That's how I could afford to send my kids to RMIT. Otherwise, what would I have used to send them to RMIT? Almost 2 of them studying in Saigon just from exporting. But the thing is, I still held the view that I had to serve the domestic market. In case later, this client stops doing business, I must have something to live on. And that's exactly what happened. By the time, around the year 2000, they quit. They stopped doing business. They weren't profitable. They stopped doing business. So I'm telling you, all the terracotta production facilities in Quang Nam, the really big factories, they all shut down. Bok Dang factory, 200 people working in that workshop, they all shut it down. Only I was left. Because I knew one thing. It's not just about making money, but also about creating culture. I still had to produce for the domestic market, then go down to the main road and set up a shop there to sell, while the export department can keep doing its thing. I did it that way. That's how I could afford to send my kids